Straight off the plane from Miami for Inside Carolina, I'm Taylor Vippolis, and this is In the Trenches, where I'm joined by my fellow Carolina football lettermen, Mike Ingersoll and EJ Wilson. Guys, it's the Tar Heels winning on the road as underdogs against the Hurricanes 27-24 on Saturday. Carolina moves to 2-0 in conference play. They stay perfect there. Let's get right into it. EJ, what were your thoughts watching that game?
My thoughts were that I feel like some of the things that we did well in the Virginia Tech game definitely carried over to this game. We were definitely physical. We had a presence at the line of scrimmage, which honestly I was a little worried about with Rava Hasek not playing. But that kind of goes into my second takeaway is that I think we're developing some really nice depth within our defensive line, especially within our front seven. Of course, there's going to be any drop off when you have two guys like Cedric Gray and Power Echols in there playing. Of course, there's going to be some talent drop off, but overall, I think that we have a nice rotation of people coming into the game, and not just people who are serviceable, but we have guys going in the game that can make plays. I mean, I was very impressed by what I saw up front. Yeah, we're still lacking a little bit in the pass rush game, but I mean, it's still encouraging to see us starting to consistently getting back to stopping the run. Because as I said on this pod for years, and especially during this season, stopping the run really sets an attitude, and it really makes it hard for the offense to really execute their game plan like they want to. So I was definitely happy about that. But the positivity pod, I have to steer it a little bit towards not so negative, but I'll just say not non-productive. That's one of my words I learned in therapy: productive and productive actions. It's very. If you would have told me that we gave up 42 rushing yards and we still had over 500 yards of total offense given up, I would not have believed in you. I mean, I don't know if Mr. Van Dyke, if he maybe summoned some old Dick Van Dyke luck in there or something, because the guy looked like a Heisman candidate yesterday, and I'm sick of us making quarterbacks look this good. I will say this though, I don't think it was more so us on defense. I think this guy just played out of his mind. I mean, you heard before the game, as I watched the telecast, they were talking about all these technical issues that he doesn't have, and it always seems like a quarterback's going to get those technical issues and all those reads kind of washed out when they play us. But all in all, I mean, if we're playing this type of defense, if we can give up 500 yards, what the important part was the amount of points that we gave up. We only gave up 24 points. Our offense wasn't clicking like it was supposed to, but what was really encouraging to me is that we showed that we can have their back when they're not flowing like they're supposed to. Drake May, he still had a good game yesterday. He wasn't efficient as we known him to be, but I mean, we kind of expected this game, and if this is gonna be his quote unquote worst game of the season, shoot, I'll take it. I mean, I still will take
three touchdowns and 300 yards.
Yeah. I'll take that. I mean, that's a shabby day in the office for that guy, but I mean, it's kind of the play that we come to expect from him. So overall, I think that this is a great team game. Are there things that we need to clean up? Yeah, but I'm always happy with the win. I'm happy with being 2-0 in the ACC.
Defense looked a lot like Vip can speak to this, the 2015 team and those Chiswick defenses where, between the green zones, right? So we're talking like, the 35 to the 35, they were, it was just chunk play. And then you get into the green zone, shores up a little bit, and then you get in the red zone and it gets real tight and they get real good. That's what when people say bend, don't break defense, that's usually the hallmark of a, bend, don't break defense. If you want to use that cliche, that's what those Chiswick defenses look like his first go around. That's what they looked a lot like yesterday.
Yeah,
exactly.
That was my main point in my takeaway video, where exactly I even mentioned the 2015 team. This team has to live with being tough near the red zone when the field condenses. You got that yesterday with the turnover on downs. You got it when Cedric Gray punched one out, because for the most part, it is so hard for a team to go 70 plus yards on those 10, 15 play drives, where essentially what the Carolina defense is banking on is them being tough and then Miami making a mistake. And when you put teams in positions like that, and you do get tough in the red zone, you do have success, where I think the Carolina defense was a lot better than the box score might indicate.
Yeah, I thought defensive line did a really good job of, like, when they couldn't get home on the pass rush, which I'll say this, our ends actually were doing a pretty good job of getting upfield. And there's offensive lineman wisdom is this. You can widen a pocket two ways. You can widen it vertically or you can widen it horizontally. Okay. Well, what happens when you try to widen it vertically, which is what I think their tackles started trying to do, and I could tell based on at least Miami's right tackle set, the way he was setting back as hard and as fast as he was setting back vertically, straight back. They were just trying to create pocket. They were trying to create a vertical wide pocket so that Van Dyke could maybe leak out a little bit and make a play after, reestablishing the pocket somewhere 2 or 3 yards away. That's what they were trying to do once they realized that guys like Keemon Rucker, Des Evans were fast enough to get the edge on them. And what ultimately happens there, though, is if you have defensive ends that recognize that's happening, which I think is what ultimately our defensive line did yesterday, is they can start cutting that edge short. So if you try to widen it by taking it vertical, you actually make it really super skinny and make it hard for a guy to breathe. So there was pressure yesterday, although it didn't result in a lot of sacks. But the one thing I thought the defensive line did a really, really good job of was getting their hands up when they didn't get home. When they didn't get a hit or a pressure or a hurry, they got their hands up and they tipped a bunch of passes. And Van Dyke's not a short guy. Like, this isn't a, for Panthers fans, this isn't a Baker Mayfield situation, right? Van Dyke's a prototype NFL quarterback. And we were still getting our hands up, tipping passes, and they were just getting lucky. So when Taylor talks about defense look better than the box score would tell you, some of that is those tip passes that were just fluttering into guys' hands and just falling in the right spot. Under normal circumstances, that would be a tip drill, and those would be interceptions. And Carolina's defense will figure that out. But clearly, they had a mandate from the coaching staff that if you don't get home, start getting your hands up, and it worked. So
we've been saying that over the last couple of weeks too. I mean, not only Mr. Ruckus yesterday getting the tip for the interception, but Mr. Vohasek last week and a couple of weeks before that. I mean, you see these guys, as you mentioned, these tackles, their jobs are really to come in and compress the pocket and get in the quarterback's face, as Mike was mentioning, different ways of stretching the pocket horizontally and vertically. And our guys are doing a really good job. Do we have a bunch of guys that are going to go out there going to get you 10 sacks a season? No, we don't. But do we have some guys who can play disciplined, tough, and physical and know when to get their hands up? Yeah, we do. So we don't have to lead the country in sacks, but if we're getting those tip passes and getting in the quarterback's face, then we're going to be successful. It didn't show much yesterday, but I think in the future, with that type of defensive line pressure, I think we can be very successful.
And Taylor, I guess we'll let you get some words out here. We're trying to carry you a little bit because for those at home, Taylor's coming into the pod straight from the Fountain Blue, straight from the club to the plane to the pod. From Miami, so he might be a little jet lagged. I remember
running on fumes right now.
A quick story time when I was in Canada, which I don't advertise because I'm a red-blooded American and Canada sucks. But when I was in Canada for my little time, Brian Brom was one of our backups. Jeremiah Masoli was another one of our backups, and I remember me, Brian, Jeremiah, a few other guys all went out. We were in Montreal, and we all. After we played the Alouettes, we all went out to the Montreal bars after because they didn't close till 5 o'clock in the morning. And our train was at 6 a.m. back to Hamilton, Ontario, which is where we were. And we stayed out all night long. I remember getting back to the hotel around 5 o'clock in the morning. We had just eaten some poutine at some diner, which is disgusting, by the way.
What?
I'm glad we don't serve poutine here in the States.
I love it.
I'm sure. Yeah, I bet you do. And we finally get back to the hotel. The sun is just now coming up and we're sitting on a park bench and I didn't know where I was or what was going on. Not from the alcohol, but from the sleep deprivation and the dehydration. And I got on that train and we had a 3-4 hour train ride back to Hamilton. By the time I got back to Hamilton, I crashed. So Taylor, I don't know how you're doing this podcast right now because that night I went out with Masoli and Brian Brom and those guys. We had a lot of fun in Canada and I was not functional the next day.
Yeah, as much as I would have loved to have been at, Live nightclub.
You don't live in Club Live?
No. By the time I left Hard Rock Stadium, it was probably 11. By the time I get back to where I'm staying, it's about 12. I get the Uber to the airport at 4 a.m. Somebody's got to do it, though.
People remember the
somebody's got to keep the lights on around here.
Exactly.
From a Carolina football standpoint, the city of Miami has been real boon or bust for us. I mean, it's the city of Miami almost cost us the football program, but it also has been the source of a lot of wins.
Yeah,
I forgot about that, man.
I mean, dude, I don't know, real love-hate relationship with the city of Miami.
And
I mean, you're having a love-hate relationship with sleep right now, Taylor.
Mike, before we get to your takeaways, EJ, a point you made. Those tip passes where they were just finding ways into Miami, it had that feel where you're like, oh no, these are the breaks you normally get when a team is going to pull off some kind of miracle like Miami. Then you have the whole onside kick debacle where onside kicks.
We got lucky.
I don't know what the official number is for onside kicks. Teams have to recover onside kicks at like a 95%, but Carolina, it feels like 50-50 every time that onside.
Oh yeah.
Did you see what happened in the Oklahoma State game? This is something that I didn't understand. I should have. I mean, I don't look at the NCAA football rule book, right? I mean, but a lawyer could figure this out. The rule on kickoffs for fair catches is as long as you make a fair catch signal, okay, the ball is yours, assuming you catch it, don't muff it. Or if so the ball goes straight up in the air off the tee, you make a fair catch, ball is yours, assuming you catch it, don't muff it. Same rule applies if the ball is immediately hits the ground, goes vertical into the air. They're describing an onside kick, goes vertical into the air as if it had come off of a kicking tee. Mm-hmm. And you make a fair catch sign and catch it. Kid for Oklahoma State on what looked like, who were they playing? Was it Texas Tech? I think it was Texas Tech. It was yesterday. Texas Tech kicked a surprise. They scored early, then they kicked a surprise onside kick. It looked like they recovered it, but on replay, it showed one of the defensive backs that was up on the front line saw the onside kick, made a quick fair catch signal with his hands, and then Texas Tech was the first team to touch it. So it was actually Oklahoma State's ball where he signaled for the fair catch.
Oh, wow.
Or where the ball was recovered, I should say, which was right where he signaled for the fair catch.
That's a wrinkle. Carolina
that's a wrinkle
has to implement.
Yeah, I think for Carolina, they need to start having everybody on the hands team start waving for a fair catch as soon as they see him line up for
traffic control at an airport.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, the airport you just came from.
Yeah, but my bigger point there was, the tip passes are happening, the onside kick is happening, and I'm like, I'm sitting in the press box like, man, it can never be easy for Carolina football, but I love it. I live in the mud. I want to be in the mud.
That's where we operate, man. That is where we operate.
When we had, and I was telling Taylor this off there, we'll talk about it here. But like my only big concern is clock management, which has been not an issue, but there's been some questionable clock management the last couple of years, and we saw some yesterday. And I'm sure there were reasons for it. There are analytics reasons for the reason why we did some things, which I don't necessarily agree with all the time. But when they scored just before the half, when we threw that interception after pressing with 25 seconds to go before the half and getting the ball coming out the second half, we pressed, Drake throws a pick, they come in, they score, they kick a field goal, they cut it to within, 4 at that point?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cut it to within 4. They scored 10 points in like 20 seconds. I just jumped up and yelled, Carolina football deserves a death penalty. Just bring it back in 10 years. And then later on in the game, in the second half, we come out, our defense gets a couple stops, we score, then defense shores up for the whole game, for the rest of the game. And Giovanni Biggers got the pick to end the game.
Boykins, yeah.
Boykins. Yeah. And I'm jumping up and down. I'm yelling, Carolina football, 5-1. So like you guys, like I'm living in like these highs and lows. Like we need the death penalty.
Last case of emotion.
We need the death penalty, and also we want Bama.
Do we?
I don't think so.
We didn't want South Carolina last year, so we're taking
Kentucky didn't want South Carolina yesterday.
We just want Duke.
We want Duke
next Saturday, 8 p.m. from Wallace Wade. Mike, what were your overarching themes watching the offense from Hard Rock? And it was an offense that didn't have their best performance. We're used to seeing them being a top 10 offense, but what did you kind of see there?
Pass protection was pretty good overall. We had some pressures, we had some hits. Some of that stuff is on the quarterback. I thought pass protection overall was much better. We handled twists better yesterday from what I could see. We still had some issues. I do want to shout out Corey Gaynor. I thought Corey Gaynor had a great game. He had a couple plays, he wants back. But overall, I thought Corey Gaynor played a pretty good game against his old team at the center spot, so he deserves a shout out. But again, like I just said, my big takeaway is it's not so much players and play execution. It's and not play calling. It's just time management, and understanding the situation. We're down there, and I understand we want to run a tempo offense, and that's how we keep defenses on their heels. That's our bread and butter. We don't want to change who we are as an offense when we get down in the tight red. But situational football, if you look at the end of the game, we left at least I counted at least 1 minute of clock time we could have burnt off. So we were snapping the ball at 20 seconds. We had 40-second clocks 3 times in a row. We snapped the ball at least twice, I think once with 17 seconds and twice with 20 seconds left, right down there in the red zone. And we could have burned off an extra minute. And I believe we scored down there too at that time. So we got some points, but we could have burned off an extra minute with points. Miami would not have had, we wouldn't have been in the onside kick situation that we were in. We wouldn't have been biting our nails at the end of the game when Boykins had to pick off a pass to win the game. We wouldn't have been in that spot. Miami wouldn't have had 2 bites at that apple at the end of the game. They would have only had 1. So the game would have been over after the onside kick recovery is my point. We wouldn't have had to put together a drive where they have 3 timeouts. We'd have to get 2 first downs in order to end the game. We wouldn't be in that situation if we just burn more time off the clock. I understand our identity is high tempo. Our identity is pace and timing in terms of the play selection and stuff. Every single play has specific timing and the players are used to a certain rhythm. I get all that. But when you're in that situation, you're on the road, you have the lead, you're in the tight red zone, you have the opportunity to burn the clock down a whole extra minute off the clock and get us down to a minute 20 instead of 2 minutes and 20 or whatever it was. You want to take that opportunity and do that because the less time they have to make a splash, the better for them, especially in offense. It's throwing the ball for 500 yards or 450 yards, whatever it was. Clearly doing whatever they want. You're going to put them in a 2-minute drill where all they're going to do is throw the ball. You may not want to give them, that luxury, given the performance that Tyler Van Dyke had for the whole day. So, there was that. There were some other, clock management situations I was a little not concerned with, but I had questions about going for it, chasing points. Another thing, they talk about Mac is real big on analytics. I think Mac's been doing this long enough to where I'm not saying he's handcuffed to analytics because he's a Hall of Fame head coach. He knows what he's doing. But for my purposes, we don't, going for it on 4th down, I think is more, or I should say the frequency with which this team goes for it on 4th down is more like it's probably closer to the reasoning, at least the rationale for it is closer to really internally, if you want the truth, what we talked about last week on the pod, which is, Mac has concerns the defense, if they're out there for too long, is going to give up too many points. And if the offense isn't out there long enough, eating up clock, scoring on every drive, we really might not have a chance to win the game. I think the last 2 weeks have shown us that our defense is starting to figure things out a little bit. Mm-hmm. I understand why there might be that hesitancy, but I think the reasoning up to this point why we've gone for 4th down as much as we have is not because of analytics, not because that's what the data tells you. It's because of the gut telling you that the offense needs to score points if we're going to win games. And in order to do that, you got to have the ball and you got to convert 4th downs and keep a drive going. So I think that's why we've been doing it. All that to say, if you're in the red zone and you have an opportunity to get away with 3 points on the road and expand a game to a 10-point lead versus going for it on 4th down where your first down is only 3 or 4 yards from the goal line. So really every shot's got to be into the end zone because you're most likely not going to convert a first down, have 1st and goal from the 3 or the 4. What's going to happen is you're going to convert and score a touchdown from that close. So when the odds of that happening are extremely tight, given that the tight red zone, the defense compresses, it's harder to score, it's harder to advance the football down there. Take the points, make it a 10-point game, which is a 2-score game, instead of risking not scoring, not getting any points, which is what ultimately happened to us in that situation. It's only a 1-touchdown lead, and now you're kind of fighting and scrapping for your life because Tyler Van Dyke's throwing the ball all over the field and kind of doing what he wants in the passing game. Those situations, if it is analytics telling you to do that, you got to scrap it. Take the points. Don't go chasing points. Don't go chasing touchdowns. Don't go chasing waterfalls. Like just
that was in my head the second you said that.
Yep. Don't go chasing waterfalls. Please stick to the rivers and the lakes that you used to, Mac. Conventional wisdom is conventional for a reason. It works. Take the points when you're down there on 4th down on the road, extend it to a 2-score lead. The reason why it's conventional is because it's been proven time and again. That's why it is conventional wisdom. Stick to conventional wisdom sometimes. But look, a win is a win, and we can we're here second guessing things after a win. It feels a lot better than second guessing things after a loss.
Yeah, sure does.
a few points off of some of the things that you said. One with the
can you parse all that out? Because I talked for about 10 minutes, and I apologize to all the listeners having to listen to my terrible voice for 10 minutes.
So they're turning it on 1.5 speed, and now they're pressing the button back, so now it's slowed back down. A couple points. One with the analytics. I think one thing that Carolina might have to start factoring in is that it seems like Noah Burnett is a weapon for this team. Like this isn't like a normal college kicker. It seems like where you go in and you say, go kick it. Maybe it's going to go in, maybe it won't. For the most part, he does seem pretty consistent. I know one of his field goals was like a 19-yarder, but for the most part this year,
I can't kick a 19-yarder, so good for him.
Yeah,
we've had situations where we didn't have a kicker who could kick 19 yards. That happened, and then he turned into an all-conference kicker.
Yeah. So I think that's one thing. The other thing is super cool video from UNC football to put out after the game where you see the emotional moment in the locker room with Corey Gaynor and the team kind of embracing him. A lot of the players say like he was essentially tearing up when talking to them in the locker room after that game. So you know how much it means to him. And then the other thing I was going to bring up really quickly was the pass block grades, since you mentioned Carolina doing a good job in pass block. It was Awesome Richards, 87.8.
Pretty good against a really good Miami defensive line.
Yeah.
About as good as you could get for a pass block grade. Spencer Rowland, 76.6. Corey Gaynor, 69.4.
Nice.
William Barnes, it's going to be worth keeping an eye on him this week to see if he returns to practice. His was a 63.9. Ed Montelis was a 43.2. And then Jonathan Adorno replacing William Barnes was 31.6. So that's going to be something definitely worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, and Montelis, in Montelis' defense, he does a lot of things that are really good. I mean, I see him do some stuff like in the run game sometimes. I'm like, man, he shows flashes where he's like, you understand why he's a starter. Like he does some really good things, and he's a big body. Like him and William Barnes are just big guards. And Montelis, I mean, he's a guy. It's not for lack of trying. I think he's got just some technique things that can be cleaned up even during the season. And some things he's worked on, that have been cleaned up. So, folks listening, don't let the PFF grade of whatever in the 30s for his pass block. Don't write him off because of that. These are just little things that can be corrected. He did a lot of really good things yesterday and does a lot of really good things every week. I understand why he's a starter, and I think he should be.
And then EJ, we mentioned it, Tyler Van Dyke, he throws for 495 yards.
95?
495, yeah.
I thought it was 450. Okay, I was wrong.
He was very close to 500 yards.
Cedric They only scored 24 points?
Yeah.
Then don't break defense.
Yeah, unbelievable.
But the reason why it feels like UNC won that game from a defensive perspective is they did make Miami one-dimensional. They held the Hurricanes to 1.8 yards per carry. What did you notice up front, especially with that goal line stand where Miami has a 1st and goal from the 2 and Carolina stops them? The first down was 1 yard, then 2nd and 1, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. Carolina gets a huge stop.
I mean, aggressive thuds, aggressive swarming in the run game is what I saw early. I mean, you tell me, EJ.
I mean, I saw the same thing, and it kind of goes back to after I think it was the FAMU game where Jason Staples and I were reviewing the touchdown run that I think it was the FAMU game, whether the one touchdown that they did score. Our guys, our footwork was bad, our pad level was high, but you're not seeing that anymore. You're seeing our defensive linemen stand guys up, move guys back, have gap integrity, and that really is, I think, the main thing to why we're able to make them one-dimensional. I mean, our guys are flying down. Power Echols, Cedric Gray, those guys are coming downhill, and it kind of worried me a little bit because of how aggressively they were playing the run. I thought it may get us caught up in some play action passes, which it did, but we were able to kind of stave off some of the long shot passes and some of the big plays that went for touchdowns. So I mean, these guys are just really, I think they're finally really internalizing the technique and the style of defense that they're playing now. I mean, coach, after the players meeting that they had, I mean, things have changed substantially. And I don't mean where we're going out there, we're getting all these turnovers, we're shutting people down. But the main thing that you can, because football is about controlling what you can control, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And the one thing that we could control is our effort, attitude, and physicality. And that's what we've been bringing to the table lately. I mean, I think that those guys, last week, I talked about them putting something on tape and being able to go back and look at that and say, hey, we can do this. I think that we saw that. I mean, they ran the ball, 24 times for 42 yards. I mean, I don't care who you are, what level you're playing on. That is absolutely shutting down the run game. And it forced them to abandon it. And like we were kind of talking about earlier, like some of those tip passes that our defensive linemen were getting that just happened to fall in Miami's hand. Now that we're seeing that on tape, our DB and our secondary is going to be in a position to now get those and be able to make big plays on some of those tip passes. So I think that we're really coming along nicely. I mean, we talked about for years on this podcast, the improvement between games 1 and 2, and then from 2 and 3, and then the gradual improvement through the rest of the season. But for our guys, I think we've seen the biggest improvements between games 4 and 5, leaving that Notre Dame game, going into that Virginia Tech game, and now seeing the continuity going on. And I mean, it's the perfect time for it to happen, right when we're in the heart of our ACC schedule. So I honestly look forward to seeing these guys continue to do this. And with Rava Hassett coming back into the mix, guys continually getting healthier, guys continually to lock down on their keys, I think it's only going to improve. I mean, you're starting to see Kemon Ruckus, Mr. Ruckus, get in there and get mixed up even on a little bit more of the running downs. And as we've mentioned, the guy has incredible hands, incredible leverage. I mean, he does everything that you want to see from a defensive end, from a well-balanced defensive end that can rush the passer and play the run. Some of those guys, Hester, Travis Shaw, those guys are really getting in the mix, and it was really encouraging to see Miles Murphy out there making some plays. I mean, exactly. He had a great game. I mean, that's a guy that we were expecting. Honestly, I thought maybe this may have been his last year at Carolina because of the way that he's been playing last year and how he's being better. And now with him coming off that injury, you're starting to see the Miles Murphy that we're used to playing, that we're used to seeing. So, I mean, you talk about not only do we have big bodies that we can put out there, we have big talented bodies who can go out there and make plays. So, I mean, I'm just really excited to see that. I'm excited to see the depth that we're developing. But as long as we're physical up front, we can start. I feel like we can play with any team in our conference. Yeah, we aren't getting the sacks, but that pushback that we're getting on the runs translating, and we're getting those tips. We're getting in quarterback spaces, and we're making them uncomfortable. So it's really translating all over the field. And I'm really want to see what's going to happen against Duke. I think this is the opponent that is always going to play their best. Kind of think about like App State, or if we're playing at ECU. No disrespect to Duke, they are ACC school, but at the end of the day, I kind of still look at them as our little brother. So I definitely think that these guys are going to want to go in and assert some dominance and kind of make up for some of the, I'll say, mishaps that we've had against Duke in the past on some of these Saturdays. So if we keep bringing the physicality, we keep developing these players, and we can tighten it up on the back end, because our safeties really had a rough day yesterday. And I think we kind of talked about in the beginning how some of those PFF grades were really surprising us. But I think that once we clean some things up as far as run fits as well as pass fits, and with our safeties and the rest of our secondary, I think this defense is only going to get better. I mean, it's hard not to get better when you're 116th in the nation.
Yeah, I mean, we got. I mean, I'm looking at the schedule here too. I mean, we've got. Not looking too far ahead. The next game is the most important game. Mm-hmm. You know, obviously it's a cliche, but it's true for a reason. You don't want to look past Duke. I mean, it's a night game. They're going to be fired up. It's a rivalry game, and then we've got what, a bye, and then a Friday night game against Pitt. That's gross. And then
it's always something with that Pitt game.
It's a Friday night. Friday night is for high school varsity football. I'm sorry.
They always
get off my lawn.
They always smack that Pitt game in the middle of the week.
Get off my lawn. Thursdays is for 1 to 2 marquee college football games and JV high school. Friday is for varsity high school football. Saturdays for college. Mondays for the NFL. Get off my lawn. But then we go Pitt on Friday. That's a toss up. I thought early in the year, Pitt was.
I also hate to be the bearer of bad news. The Pitt game's on a Saturday.
I was about to say, that's a Saturday. My birthday's the day before, man. My birthday's the 20th on that Friday. Pitt's a Saturday.
Pitt's a Saturday? It's October 28th on this schedule.
It's 29th.
It's the 29th.
Good. Whew. Okay,
what confused me was I knew the game was in Chapel Hill, and I knew Carolina didn't have any Friday games.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Okay, so we got another bye coming up. Then we got Pitt. You know, we know Mac has, since he's been at Carolina, we've had trouble off bye weeks for as long as I can remember. Mm-hmm. The last time we were successful was 2008 against Georgia Tech. I can't remember the last time we came off a bye and won a football game, except for 2015.
Was Rutgers? Rutgers was that 2008, or when was that? Because that was coming
08.
off of. Yep. So yeah, that year, coming off a bye week.
Okay. And then we got Virginia, and then we got Wake Forest. And Virginia, I mean, that's another game you want to talk about defensive backs having to shore things up and quarterbacks having 500-yard games. I mean, that's Virginia looked like boo-boo yesterday, but they got a quarterback who can play. So
you know how quarterbacks feel about our defense.
Yeah, they can run and throw all they want. But if our run game is short up, I mean, Taylor made the point early on. Like if you make an offense one-dimensional, and you said this point too, like you make them one-dimensional, and okay, fine, you throw the ball for 500 yards. Like you came away with 24 points, and the reason you came away with 24 points is because you can't do more than one thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if all we have to do is really, if all we got to do is worry about one thing, we're going to limit the amount of points you score, and then our offense can score virtually at will, if they want to, which is why we pressed before the end of the first half, which is my other clock management issue. I mean, when you got the ball coming out of the second half and you got a lead, don't go pressing before the half. Just take a knee and go into the halftime, get the ball coming out.
One would say they shouldn't chase that waterfall.
Don't chase that waterfall. Please stick to the rivers and the lakes that you used to.
Deja vu.
Yeah, stick to the rivers and the lakes you're used to, man.
With the Carolina defense, I think they did do a good job. Jason Staples made me laugh with the tweet that he had. It was welcome to the 2022 college football season, UNC's defensive line. And it was on that goal line stand, and he tweeted, Miles Murphy with the low pad level and burst through the gap. Great first two steps with power. He wasn't the only one. Keyshawn Silver moved the line of scrimmage. Several others with good pad level, physicality, technique. If these guys start doing this, look out.
Man, EJ, I'll tell you what, some people don't like us. A lot more people don't like Jason.
Yeah, and I think Jason kind of feeds into that. And that's why I love working with Jason, because he's going to say what's on us now. He is a villain. I love him now.
I don't want people to dislike me. He just doesn't care.
He's inside Carolina Skip Bayless. The guy just stirs the pot.
And Mike, as
he's Skip without the body.
For the
sorry, Jason.
Not many.
You're beautiful to me, Jason.
Not many people have that Skip physique.
Or that Skip paycheck. Yeah. Jason ain't got that either.
But Mike, as more time kind of passes, the more it looks like that when healthy, Caleb Hood is Carolina's.
I've been saying that for a couple of years now. Yeah,
running back one. Yeah, it's a bit surprising because the narrative out of camp was, Omarion Hampton, George Pettaway, but Hood, if he stays healthy, he goes for over 100 yards. He does it in the run game. He does it out of the backfield as a receiver. He had a pretty good pass block grade from what I remember.
Which is an improvement for him.
79.1 in the pass block.
Big improvement for him.
Yeah, he was Carolina's best graded offensive player. What did you kind of see from him and his potential in this Carolina offense?
Omarion Hampton and George Pettaway are both going to be fantastic running backs for us. But right now, I think Caleb differentiates himself with field vision, and he doesn't see things the way that like a Michael Carter and a Javante saw it. He doesn't, but not many people do. Okay. But he does see things develop quicker. And this is an experience thing. Like to the extent George is having this issue, Omarion, I think, is having this issue just from what I can see. He's able to power his way through other human beings, which is, where his production's coming from, because he's just an absolute tractor trailer back there. But where Caleb's differentiating himself is that he sees things develop quicker, most likely just because he's got game snaps and live bullets under his belt, and he sees it, and he understands, schematically what the goal is and where the cutback lanes will be. So he anticipates them opening better than some of the young guys right now. They'll get there, but Caleb's already there. So that allows him to be more productive in the run game, rushing the football. And that's why you're seeing him out there. And he's also a load. I mean, he's a big guy. Like he's another one that he's got sneaky speed, but he'll also run through you if he has to. My concern with him is always, and has been, pass protection first and foremost, and ball security number two. He took care of both yesterday. Hopefully, he's the good news is that with a guy like him, Caleb gets dinged up a little bit, and we're able to spell him some because we have so many good backs in that room. If British Brooks was there, we'd have another one. We've got, by my count, 5 running backs in that room that could play. If we handed them the football, 6 maybe. I mean, you got DJ Jones too. I keep forgetting about DJ. I mean, you got 6 running backs in that room. If they're all healthy, they can all play and they can all be highly effective and would be a starter or one of 2 featured backs on any team. We just have an embarrassment of riches in that room. Caleb's obviously in that group. So we're able to spell him a little bit with other guys, which should keep him healthy and keep him, productive, much longer. I hope he came out of this Miami game a little unscathed, but we're really going to need him for the Pitt game. We have enough bodies, I think, even if he is a little banged up, and he can't take as many carries against Duke, we'll really need him against Pittsburgh. So I think that what he brings to the table is maturity. He obviously has experience, and because of both of those things, he sees plays develop. He understands how plays will likely develop and can anticipate, where a hole will be or where a cutback lane will be, and that allows him to be super productive, rushing the football. And he's also pretty reliable in the pass game too, for catching the football. Now that he seems like he's started to clean up some pass protection issues and clearly ball security. He didn't have, from what I could see, a single drop or even a ball come loose yesterday. I think he's a real special asset we have.
Yeah, especially in the pass game. He seems like such a security blanket for Drake May, where it's like, a 3rd and 8, and you're starting to think, oh man, Carolina's going to have to punt this ball. He finds Caleb Hood, and Caleb Hood gets 9. If it's a third,
Caleb comes from good stock too.
He gets 10.
Yeah, he comes from good stock too. I mean, he comes from, another. His dad was somewhat of a legend here in Carolina too, Earl Hood. So
yeah, you have a bunch of legacy guys.
You really do
on this Carolina team. Drake May,
which is nice. Yeah,
that's the Mac effect. That is the coach. That is the Mac Brown effect. I mean, it's a reason why when he was making that he was convinced to come back after going out and talking to his older players. Yeah, it was the love, but he also saw some 4- and 5-star talent in those living rooms when he went to see those guys. So makes sense. So everybody wins, right?
That is funny. If Caleb Hood was UNC's best offensive player, I think the best defensive player, EJ, Cedric Gray. He shows up time and time again. He makes clutch plays for the defense, from the forced fumble to keeping the ball carrier inbounds late, which really set Miami off in a panic before that interception when they realized that clock was under 15 seconds at that point.
Was that Cedric or was that Power Eccles that made that tackle at the end of the game?
That was Gray.
That was Gray, yeah.
Where he spun
kept
the
him
guy.
in bounds.
Yeah, kept him in bounds. He just makes winning plays, and he's proof that when you play hard, good things happen. That was one of the first things he said in his post-game press conference yesterday. 15 tackles, no missed tackles. In run defense, he graded out 87.9. Tackling, he graded out 87.3. How do you begin to put into words Cedric Gray's importance to this defense and his performance Saturday against Miami?
I think that Cedric Gray is what we would have saw if Chaz Surratt would have played linebacker, if he was a true linebacker. This guy, I think the perfect play that can put not only his importance to our defense, the type of player he is, and to kind of back up his statements from after the game yesterday. They ran a wheel route. He had his eyes on his luggage. He knew where he was going to cover, but he's covering a running back. The guy goes down the field. I think it's maybe a 15 to 20 yard gain, but hey, there you see 33 making a touchdown saving tackle, and I don't think that they scored on that drive. So that when you're out there in the heat of a game, when it's 80% humidity in Miami and you have the wherewithal to make that play and keep that guy in bounds, I know I wouldn't have had that. I would have just been trying to get the guy down. So, this guy's a really smart player. His discipline, technique, and his knowledge of the game goes along with his athleticism, to the point where I really can't tell you what his best feature is. The guy comes downhill. He plays with physicality. It has to be the smile. A lot of linebackers don't smile, but linebackers who do smile probably have a little bit off upstairs. I used to tell people when I was out there playing, I didn't talk trash. I just laughed a lot because people didn't think you probably have something clinically wrong with you. So, but no, that guy. The guy reminds me of another 33, Hallie Taylor, a guy that I played with. I mean, he embodies everything and stands for what I feel like everything that Hallie stood for. He's a fast guy. He's a physical guy. Hallie was, even though he was one of the smallest, he was probably the strongest defensive end and defensive lineman that we had on the team. I mean, and Mike can attest to that. The guy has not only has 40 records, he has, oh, I have the squad record. I'm not gonna give him that one, but he is he's a pretty strong guy, and I think that he always showed up every Saturday. Even when he made a mistake, he didn't get down on himself, and that's the same thing that I see from Cedric. I really think that he's having an all ACC type of season, and no matter what, how bad our defense plays, I still think that we have the two best linebackers in the ACC. And you're gonna have a hard time arguing me on that. I mean, our guy came, what was his name? Dax Hollifield came into last week talking about how the crowd's going to be booing and jeering him, and he got exposed. Our guys, I mean, even what's the guy who shall not be named from NC State?
Well, so I had the same thought last night. I was watching some of the state game just to get a preview of what we're going to have from them, and I thought, imagine if Dax Hollifield committed, because I don't think he ever actually committed to Carolina, but it was between us and Tech up until the wire. Peyton was obviously committed and then decommitted to go to State, which is a mortal sin. But imagine if both those guys came to Chapel Hill, those would be your linebackers right now. Dax Hollifield and Peyton Wilson would be your linebackers, not Cedric Gray and Power Eccles, most likely. And I don't know that I think I'm happier with the current situation. As a matter of fact, I know I'm happier with the current situation than I would be with them.
Oh, yeah, because those guys are much younger. These guys are younger than those two, and I still think that they're playing at a high level right now.
Well, and I'll never forget Peyton Wilson getting thrown down by one of our backup offensive linemen.
Oh, yeah. That guy's a menace.
Oh man, I'm sorry, I'm mad. I'm blanking on this. I think it was a kid from West Virginia. He's backup center, 57.
Caden Baker, maybe.
Caden Baker. I think Caden Baker was the one that threw him down.
Did you see
at the end of the state
yesterday?
game when we romped them Peyton's freshman year? Yeah.
Did you see Caden Baker yesterday checking in as the eligible?
Oh yeah, he does
tackle,
that. They get him in the game for that.
jersey.
I saw that.
Everybody in the press box was like, "Who's 90? Who's the white?"
He ran a route. We threw the ball to him. Yeah.
That's the Andre Barbour classic. You remember Andre Barbour? They actually gave him number 93 as well. He was an offensive tackle,
dude,
and we put him.
Shoot put in a play for me on that, because remember I was the wing on field goal, but when I was backing up Garrett Reynolds, I wore 82 and I was the wing on field goal, and Shoot put that play in for me against Duke in 2008, and we never got into the red zone, so we could never run it.
I remember that. We were all waiting for that play, man. I played a little.
I borrowed Ed Barham's gloves and like everything. Like I made sure I was like ready. I was back in my tight end days. Like I wasn't leaving anything to chance. I had sticky gloves. I took my knee braces off. Like I was ready. We never got in the red zone.
My only glory from playing tight end was when we played Boston. Well, it's not even glory; it's just a story. Honestly, we were playing Boston College, Luke Kuechly's freshman year, and at this point, I had no idea who he was. So I go out to block this guy, and this guy completely stood me up. I mean, I was like, Jesus! I was like, I'm glad I don't have to block this guy all game. And I mean, you see where his career went. So I think that it's always interesting when you see us big guys coming in to play tight end. I mean, not going to say that we run routes better, but I mean, the tape's out there, so.
Mike,
we're more appreciative of the routes.
Let's
put it that way.
The last question I have for you, Mike.
Well, I have a question for you, Taylor. Was it hotter on the field or in the club last night?
It was the press box. It's AC, but the second you step out, you just start sweating.
Mm-hmm.
What about the second you step into the club?
Wouldn't know.
Wouldn't know. Can't remember.
But Carolina, last question I have. Carolina 3-0 on the road this year. They are their version of the Road Warriors. They're 2-0 in conference play. Pole position for the Coastal Division to be the ones representing the Coastal.
There's going to be a joke about Carolina on the pole position on Pack Pride later today. Yep.
How are you feeling through two conference games, and knowing that Carolina is 3-0 on the road, where, you know, they had lost, I think, 7 straight before this year. So where's your kind of overall assessment with where this team is and where this team can go this year?
I mean, it seems like I think every game on the schedule from here on out is winnable. Wake and Pitt, I think, are your toughest games. State is always a toss-up. They're a very talented team. I hate admitting this, but State's a good football team this year. But that game is always a toss-up. I mean, again, go back to the Russell Wilson games. that team was boo-boo and they always beat us. So, and we were clearly more talented than they were every single year. So the state game is always a toss-up. I think Pitt and Wake are the toughest football games on the schedule remaining. The letdown game, I think, is either the Virginia or the Duke game. Either of those could be a letdown, and we might split those games. But if all goes according to plan, I mean, I think this team has I think with this offense, and if the defense continues to play the way they're playing, meaning defense can hold teams to under 27 points. If you can hold teams to under 27 points, this game aside, because I think Miami's defense is pretty good. I think their defensive line's pretty good. I think Drake just had some brain farts. He'll get that stuff corrected. I think our offense can score more than 30 points every game. And then you make one play in the kicking game, a blocked punt, a missed field goal, a made 55-yard, something unexpected in the kicking game. And now you've got the game breaking in your favor. I think every single game is certainly winnable. I'm not predicting we're going 11-1. All right. But we've beaten two good teams. And if that situation were to play out, that we managed to win out, we have to have a real conversation about, back in 2015, we said, is the South Carolina loss to open the season the worst loss in Carolina football history? It may have been. If this team wins out with Clemson being down, is the Notre Dame game actually the worst loss in Carolina football history, assuming we only have one loss on the schedule going in and we go to the ACC championship game? I think that's a very real conversation that could be had at the end of the season. Realistically, I think we probably drop two more games. I don't know which games those are, but I think we probably drop two more games. 3 more games wouldn't surprise me, but I don't think, 8 wins, I think, is realistic at this point. We're already at 5, and they've exceeded my expectations. I said at 3-0, and we all did, let's pump the brakes. We haven't really played anybody, and that was true at the time. We've now beaten 2 conference teams. We're 5-1. We're unbeaten in the conference, and it's a mixed bag of difficulty moving forward for the rest of the season. So I think at this point, like I said, you'll probably know what type of team we have after week 5. Here we are, we're after week 6. I think now you can honestly say that if the defense can keep this up, you have a defense that is bend don't break, a middling type of defense. We've got a top 10 offense in a lot of respects, almost top 5 in some areas nationally. If we can have a defense that's ranked in the 50s or the 60s as opposed to 126th in certain categories, if we can get that up to the 50s, 60s, even the 70s, literally cut the ranking in half. I think this team absolutely could win out the season, but can definitely win 8 games.
Yeah.
And I think 8 games, based on the letdown we saw last year, with a freshman quarterback and new pieces at key positions this year, and a new defensive coordinator in Chiswick, and sort of a revamping of the program internally, I think puts us, here we are again talking about, are we ahead of schedule? 2019, 2020, we're talking about, are we ahead of schedule with Sam Howell, right? But are we ahead of schedule, from where we should be now? And then we're talking about Drake's second year as a starter and what might that look like, because we returned so many pieces. But I think I'm optimistic. This is the roller coaster I talked about earlier with Carolina football. End of the first half, we deserve the death penalty. Bring it back in 10 years. End of the game, we want Bama. This is the roller coaster, man. Like, beginning of the season is like, I don't know, maybe we probably miss a bowl game, and now it's like, I don't know, maybe we go to the ACC championship game. So it's Carolina football, for better for worse. Like you said, Taylor, it's a ride. It seems like most years it is an absolute ride, and for us being invested in it personally, I've got more gray hair at the end of football season every year since I think I stopped playing than I did when I did play. And the only concussions I'm getting are from banging my head against the wall, not other human beings.
Yeah, it is. If Carolina can run the table, getting to the ACC championship,
gotta beat Duke first. But yeah,
I can live with the conversation. Is the Notre Dame game a bad loss, similar to the South Carolina game?
Oh, not a bad loss. Is it the worst loss in program history? Yeah.
I could live with that scenario. If you tell me I could get that, I'd sign up for 11-1 and We're
Oh, yeah,
having
without a
we're
doubt.
having that debate on the podcast.
Yeah.
But it's a really weird schedule coming in for Carolina. They have 6 games left. The furthest game is Charlottesville. It's actually the only game that Carolina has remaining that is out of state. But Carolina, October 15th, this Saturday at Duke, Wallace Wade Stadium, ACC Network, 8 p.m. kickoff. Guys, appreciate the time today and appreciate everybody watching and listening.
Thank you.
Yeah, man.